So how about those workshops? Did everybody enjoy your workshops? How were the information and the output? So I'm grateful that we were able to have this great attendance. And as we conclude our conversations and our motivation for today, we are going to do that by introducing to you a dynamic speaker, representative of the community on a Senate level. We are going to invite at this time Councilwoman Ruby Cotton along with Council President Bill McCoy to introduce our speaker for this evening.
It is indeed an honor. Thank you, Council President, for standing here with me. But it's indeed an honor to have Senator Ronald Rice with us this afternoon to give us a speech. But I just want to read a few little things about Senator Rice so you can kind of understand. Senator Ronald Rice, who is one of the senior ranking senators in the state of New Jersey, was first elected to New Jersey State Senate 28th Legislative District by a special election on November 18th, 1986, filling the unexpired term of the late John B. Caulfield. He was sworn into office on December 4th, 1986. The senator has since been re-elected 7 additional terms in 1987, 1991, 1993, 1997, 2001, 2003, 2007, 2011, 2013. The senator is best known for the fights for the rights of people. He is unbossed. He has refused to be controlled by individual and special interest group who simply wants to be a rubber stamp, which he is not. He wants to control his own destiny. Prior to him being a senator, Senator Rice was elected to the Newark Municipal Council. He was the first African American to ever hold the city Newark West Ward council seat. Furthermore, Senator Rice, before he became an elected official, he was a police officer. And he served on the police department, the Newark Police Department in 1972, and served as a detective until he resigned in 1980. Senator Rice is presently served as Vice Chair of the Senate Community and Urban Affairs Committee, member of the Health and Human Service Committee and Senior Citizen Committee, co-chair of the Joint Committee on Public Education, and co-chair of the Joint Committee on Economic Justice and Equal Opportunity. Senator Rice is one of the senior ranking state senators in New Jersey. Over the years, he has fought and sponsored legislation supporting, literally brought millions of dollars into his district that was needed by the local government to keep taxes down for working people, for homeowners, for legislators needed to continue programs for our children. He is a fighter for our community. He's a fighter. And I can say on July 1st in 2002, Honorable Sharp James, Mayor of the City of Newark, honored the senator by appointing him deputy mayor. And I would just like to say that, and he'll probably talk about it, but Senator Rice right now is the only black male sitting in the New Jersey State Senate seat in the state of New Jersey. We have 4 only elected officials in the state of New Jersey for the Senate, and 3 are females and 1 is a male. And let me tell you, when Senator Rice summons black elected officials to show up somewhere, you show up. Because what he has to tell you is important, because if we're going to stick together and stay together, he is our leader, he's our elder, and we have to make sure that we stick together. And I have here now Senator Rice.
Let's give him a hand, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Let me say it's good to be here in Paterson. Paterson is not a strange place for me. I want to first of all acknowledge my colleagues, Council President McCoy and Councilwoman Cotton, and the other council persons who are here. But I have a long-standing history and distance relationship with Paterson. I was here, and I was so glad to see her. I don't know if she's in the room right now, but I started years ago with Marilee Jackson and Councilman Cotton at the time, the other side of Ruby, and others, you know, Councilwoman Ames and others with Donald Tucker. In fact, I remember sitting there in public housing on the floor when black folk was talking about how to get control of their destiny and how to insist that government allow everybody to be included in the process. And that's many years ago. And so I'm happy to be here. You know, I happen to know some of the politics of Patterson. I understand it. I understand some of the relationships. And let me say to you that there are no difference than any place else you go to where you have African Americans, an immigrant population, and culturally disadvantaged whites, which mean poor people who are struggling and middle class who are being stretched too far. And government is not very good at helping us, and that's our problem. And I'm going to give you a little history because this is Black History Month, but I think that every day should be Black History Day for all of us, okay? Not only Black History Day for all of us, it should be Black History Day for people like the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, too. Yeah, and people like the others who have been empowered, because the one thing that God did when he made us black, he made them black, too. They just don't know it. And so they need to, you know, thank God, because the opportunities they have is not the opportunities because, you know, of their philosophy. It's the opportunity because God made them black, and white folks knew that they needed some black folk that can be up in toms that can put them in those positions. So they benefited, you know, from being black, and they should celebrate Black History Day, even though their job is to suppress us and hold us back. So I need to say that to you, so you don't have to say anybody said it but me, and I'm sure that Mr. Thomas is not going to come and talk to me about my statements. I also want to say that it's important that we talk, because I see young people here. And one of the things that disturbed me the most is what's been happening to black leadership throughout the country, but in New Jersey, and particularly the years that I've been involved with politics. You know, I served as the councilman in the city of Newark for 16 years. I was the first black to be elected councilman of the West Ward in the city. I took out a long-staying person who said they say he couldn't be beaten, and that was Michael Batone, God bless his soul. My party put me off the Democratic Party line 3 times, so I beat Sharp James, the county executive, Democratic Party, and everybody else, the labor unions, off 3 times. And interesting enough, everybody's going, some have died, some went to jail, some sticking around, worrying about me. And I've been in the state legislature for 30 years, and I watch them come and go. And so when it comes to our people, it becomes clear to me that I have one mission, and that's to be the voice of all people, but have a special agenda for African American and black people given our history of struggle. And I say on the floor of the Senate, and I tell them on the floor of the Senate that I'm never going to be ashamed, and black people and black elected officials and black clergy should not be ashamed of identifying who you are and what you represent. You know, Italians and Irish are not, you know, ashamed of saying it. I can assure you that my good friend and Senate colleague, Loretta Weinberg, is not ashamed to tell you about the Holocaust and their history of struggle for the Jews. So why are we so ashamed and bury our faces when we have to sing out what bothers us? You know, it bothers me. You know, we live in communities today that are very diverse. They were very diverse back in the old days. It's just that the diversity of those communities are changing right now. It's no longer the Irish, the Italians, the Latinos, and blacks. It's blacks, Latinos, Asians, and other immigrant populations, our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, our brothers and sisters from Haiti, our brothers and sisters from the continent. So it's a whole different kind of diversity, and government looks at it differently. You know, they're constantly suppressing. There's a problem, the problem that I always tell people that with being black, I say, you know, because people say, you know, what is wrong with the black community? You know, they try to give the impression that we can't lead and represent you. They try to give the impression that we don't know what we're talking about. But I remind them that there's a history of struggle that got us where we are today, and that history of struggle has made us, you know, better than most folk when it comes to the ability and skill sets. They talk about athletics, but we talk about knowledge and academics. You know, when they said we'll never have a black president, then somebody above us said that we're going to show you that's wrong. You're wrong in that notion. We had President Obama, and he was the best president around if you want to really lay it out there and look at the records. But for the young people, there's a history that they're not teaching you in school, in most schools, that should teach you. And it's a black history. And that black history should be just as important, if not more important, than the history of America, the history of the revolutions and all those other kinds of histories they give us, because if in fact, we had come to this country like everybody else, I believe things would be different. And so what am I talking about? People ask me all the time, they say, well, what's wrong with the black community? We don't get your folk, they gangbanging, they shooting each other. Well, first of all, we don't get your folk, because you keep holding us back. Because of what we do, we get held back. And I really believe the reason for that, Councilman McCoy, is because of this whole slave mentality. Yeah. There's something about coming from slavery in this country. I really believe, had we come through Ellis Island like everybody else, things would not be the same today. Immigrants come to this country, they come from very poor countries, they come here very poor, but they grow. Eventually people stop putting them down and give them opportunities, they take advantage of opportunities and they grow. I'm a Vietnam veteran, 3rd Marine Corps Recon. I was out there snooping and pooping and fighting folk, and then when I got back here, a lot of the Vietnamese came on boats and ships, went straight to Livingston and Short Hills, New Jersey. They were poor, families helped them grow, and they're doing very well today. But coming from a slave mentality, even our Caribbean brothers and sisters, and those come from the continent, a lot of them grow a lot quicker than black folk who were actually raised in this country that come from a slave history ancestry. And I really believe that mentality is passed on generation after generation, whether intentional or not, for some reason when they read about slaves in this country. But the interesting thing about slavery in this country that they're not teaching the young people, and this is how I know we can all get along, and this is how I know that we're being suppressed by white political leaders, political bosses, and sold out by black folk and others. Because the indentured servitude came before slavery. Now I'm talking permanent slavery. Indentured servitude is a form of slavery, but it's a little bit more liberal. Because what happened was when this country was founded, white folks came here and they staked out the land. And they became farmers and agricultural type people, but they needed somebody to work the land, so they sent letters over to Europe and say, look, we're looking for workers. So we're gonna help you. If you come and work for us, we'll give you a contract from 5 to maybe 7 to 10 years. And you sharecrop the land, work the land, and we'll give you a place to stay. You can eat and feed, and at the end of your contract, we can even give you some land. And so when that letter went out, believe it or not, for those who don't know the history, black folks came here. But so did white folks, so did Asians and other Europeans. Nobody was arguing and fighting each other about being dark or light because they came on common grounds. The letter said come to work, and they came to work. Now, they were treated badly, but the whites were treated just as badly as the blacks in indentured servitude. But the problem is that when the contracts ran out, when the contracts ended, and they gave the sharecroppers and others, they kept the commitment and gave them land, then they had no one else to work the land. That's when slavery came about. And if black folks are the only people in the world, in the history, that was enslaved for over 247 years. And there's something about that 247 years mentality that is still holding us back today. And that's to me, that's a reality. Right now, the state of the conditions of black folk, that's what you hear about. You know what? We still have the highest crime rates in our communities. We still have the highest dropout rates in our communities. We still have the highest health care problems all across the board. You name whatever it is, we have it. We're still the ones that's losing our homes more so than anyone else. We're still the ones that get the lesser pay when we go to work for somebody. And it's just a whole series of issues that's always plagued us as a people. But for the young people, the history of struggle goes way back to indentured servitude. And when the first slave arrived in 1619, back in Virginia, that's when that 247 years started. And we've been abused, and we've been, we were sold. A lot of stuff happened. But, freedom came, because the good Lord, continues to look down, and he comes on his time, not on our time, we get that. But when freedom came, there were still problems. because black folk did not know how to function as free people. They were so used to people dictating to them. Even with the pain and suffering, they were used to it. But there were folk who taught us how to read and write. There were white folks. And I think it's important that we talk about the diversity of relationships. Yeah. Because when slavery was about, all white folks didn't agree with slavery. All right. There were slave masters, family members who would take little black folk down in areas where they wouldn't be seen or heard and taught them how to write and how to read. They thought it was wrong. And so as a result of that, they could have been penalized. And when we walk across the bridge, Selma, etc., black folks didn't walk across the bridge in Selma with Dr. King. It was black folk and white folk and other folk. And when we sit at the lunch counters, down in the South, to try to integrate those stores and those restaurants and give fair treatment for black folk and equality and justice for black folk. It wasn't just black folks down there, it was white folk. And when we went and started to do the Freedom Riders who rode south to join the war with the freedom fighters, they weren't just black folks, they were white folks too. But they were white folks with common ground. The NAACP, the oldest organization in the country, civil rights organization, and probably the oldest in the world, in the international community, was founded in 1909. Now, black folks think that the NAACP was founded by black folk. It was not founded by black folk. It was founded by white folk who invited us to be a part of. Now, there are more of us in it today than there was back then, is our organization. But it's diversity that we talk about. What bothers me is not the relationships as it relate to the ethnicity of a person, whether it's immigrant, whether it's black or white. It's what they feel inside and what they know about life and where their hearts and minds are. We have always bonded. What has happened to the condition of the black community is happening with stuff that's being fed to quote-unquote non-black folk by a handful of folk who want to control the wealth in this country and do control the wealth in this country, and then those who don't control wealth but control the politics. And that's why we have these kinds of problems that we are having. And so what do we do about it? That's the question. But first of all, we need to stop this nonsense about we're not going to vote. It bothers me because I came to Newark, New Jersey in 1955. I came to Newark, New Jersey the second week in January of 1955. And for the older people here, and for the younger people, I'm going to tell you what it meant. For the older people, you should know. I came the second week in January. That means in 1954, I was in Richmond, Virginia, the segregated South. It was segregated because Brown versus Board of Education did not come about till 1954. I believe it was May or July, someplace, and I forget the exact month. That's when integration took place. So I came from the segregated South, where it said black folk go to the back of the bus. I don't know if I ever did that. I don't remember doing that. I may have defied them then, but I don't remember. But it said black go to the back of the bus. Drink out of these water fountains. Go in the back, because my mother, who worked in a restaurant, I had to go in the back to see her. If we went to the movie, we had to sit upstairs in the movies and stuff like that. So I remember the history. So when people ask me in Trenton, my colleagues said, well, why do you stand up and speak out the way you do, and you're not ashamed to say black? I said, because I know the history of black struggle. And I also know the history of black progress. The progress came because back then in the 1950s, people started to come together to mobilize. The progress came because in 1964, people came together, black, white, young, and old, and others, and they marched across those bridges, and they went to Washington, and they fought for the 1964 Civil Rights Act, so we can have more justice than we had prior to then. I know 1965. You may not want to vote, but you need to understand how voting came about for black folk. And we still don't have total control of the votes because they have to reauthorize us every so many years. So we're good little people, then they'll reauthorize it. They're fighting now on some of the legislation dealing with voting, but we sit home and say we're not going to vote, but then we allow political bosses to pit us against each other. And we need to stop that. Political bosses pit us against each other. Black folk fighting black folk. I don't like you. Well, fine, you don't have to like me, but can we talk about the housing problem in our community? Because you have a housing problem too. How are we going to fix it? Can we talk about the jobs we don't have? Because everybody coming to America is getting jobs. You know, we don't have any. We have opportunities, and people want to share jobs with us, but we act like we don't want to work. How can you tell me that the immigrant population is taking the job for minimum wage? I don't think they should have to, but they do and they work, and I tell you there's a job over there. I ain't working for that. No, you do what you have to do to survive until we can get to where we're supposed to be. That's what you're supposed to be doing, particularly young people. I grew up working 2 jobs. I got married working 2 and 3 jobs. But it wasn't my goal to stay locked into those jobs, fellas. I went and got me a good education. Now let me talk about education. The establishment don't want us to have an education. That's why I'm in Patterson. This district has been taken over for over 20 years. 20 years run by the state, and our kids are dying every day, and they're brain damaged and brain dead. Newark, Jersey City, now Camden, because we allow that. Now the state said your condition in Patterson, I'm gonna tell you what it is. You better be ready to mobilize if the black elected official and other elected officials tell you to mobilize. Don't stay home and say it ain't gonna make no difference, because it may not, but you get on those buses, you get in those cars and go where you have to go. That's how we made progress back in the 60s. We made progress because when there was a problem in our community, the few black elected officials we had, they came into the church with the clergy members, clergy leadership, and with labor members. And they said there's a problem with housing, there's a problem with jobs, there's a problem with health care. How are we going to fix this? And they said, I don't know. So Councilman McCoy said, well, maybe if we do this, that'll fix it. And then Councilwoman Cotton said, well, that's not going to work, McCoy, because if you do that, you got to put this with it. And then someone else came and said, you got to do this. So there was always these meetings where there was discussions about the problems that was plaguing our communities. And then we would leave the churches and we'll say, okay, next week we're coming back and we're going to discuss this further until we can collectively figure out a solution to our problems. Well, when we got to the point that we thought we had a solution, that was called a policy. You with me? A policy. It wasn't called politics. It was called a policy. And it's the policy that drives the politics. The policy we took to somebody and say, excuse me, sir, or excuse me, ma'am. We have a problem. We think we know how we can fix it. Can you help us? Because we know that you are an elected official or you're running for office. No, I can't entertain that. Well, fine, we can't entertain you. That's the politics. Politics, as I told the black elected officials, statewide alliance that we just started. Policy versus politics. Policy comes first. It is the policy that drives the politics, and where black folks got offline was that, and I blame some of us for not passing it along, but what we got off track, because people said, what's wrong with our community? We got away from the policy meetings, and we got into the politics. Let me tell you about policy versus politics. Policy is something you have to work on and meet on a regular basis. I just told you that the leadership went into the church and they talked and they went back next week and they talked and they went back until their solution. That's a policy meeting. The election comes once a year. We stopped the policy meeting and got into the politics. Right. A good example, Benjamin Wimbley, your assembly person, and Shavonda Sumter, they just finished the election a few months ago. Is that right? Yeah. That was the end of politics. Guess when the next election is? Over here. What happens in here? I'm going to tell you what's happening there. White folks are coming to the table every day. Steve Sweeney, the speakers, the governor, the corporate people, the political bosses, the hedge fund people, they're coming to the table every day in between the end of the election and the beginning, setting policies. They're setting policies to say, we're going to continue to turn back the rights of women and black folk and minorities. That's what they're coming to the table on. And they come and say, here's how we're going to deal with this logistically. They're even so sophisticated today that they convince black folk who look like me and walk like me and talk like me to actually put in the legislation and support the stuff that's going to hurt us and turn us back. Because we don't do our homework because we're not coming together addressing policy. So we said we want housing. They said, yeah, we're going to give you housing, so why don't you put this in, McCoy? Well, McCoy put it in, and guess what? Patterson get housing. But then when the housing started to go up, we find out the houses like Jersey City, Gold Coast, every building is $1 million. You can't live in it. You don't even get the job. Because we didn't come together to determine our own destiny as the people and set our own housing policy and set our own health care and determine how we're going to get our jobs. Everybody with me so far? And so for us to be silent and tacit and worry about what the newspaper going to say about us, because we don't control the newspaper. In fact, if you read the Commonwealth document, the attack on public education, which is the attack on organized labor, they tell you when they organized the money, and Justice Powell, the Supreme Court Justice, was a part of that. They tell you in the document, they don't hide anything, we just don't read. They tell you that the way to bust up unions is to get black folk away from unions and get Latinos away from the unions. They said, but there's a problem. Well, what's the problem? Well, the problem is that black folks are loyal to the unions because it's because of organized labor that black folks have opportunities and been protected. They said, but the Latinos, you can pull away because they go like this. Now, this is not to offend the Latino here. That's written. I ain't saying it. That's what they say. But I watched that to be true more so than blacks. They said blacks would sit home and don't vote at all before they go Republican or be swayed that way. And we do. We sit home too much. And that's what the problem is. Every dime that comes into Patterson from the federal government is directed, as much as you don't know, by the number of voters that come to the polls. The same at the state level. So when you don't vote, you lose money, and then you're beating up on your council people and your mayor talking about how you going to fix this, what you going to do about this. Well, you know what? Government is not a business. They can't produce some new good or services that they can market to make more money. For them to fix, they got to get money from you. So that's the reality. And so we have to get our act together. The New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus, which I'm the chair, and I'm proud to be the chair of the organization. I love the organization. There are 18 of us out of 120 legislators. There are only 18 black folk. And that's sad. And when I went to Trenton in 1986, there was only one black person, and most of you know her, but those people, Senator Winona Lippman. Out of 40 state senators in 1986, to show you the racism and the bias in this state, only had one black person. When I went to Trenton in 1986, it was the first time in the history of the state. I'm going to say it again. The first time in the history of the state, 1986, that two black people sat in a 40-member Senate at the same time. Now, here it is, 2016, and we only have 4 people. We had 6. You said, what happened? What happened? You don't vote. What happened? Political voices control us. And so they take Dana Red out the Senate because they control some of us and say, you're not going to be in the Senate. We're going to make you the mayor so we can control you down in Camden so we can take over school districts and stuff like that. And we're going to put the political boss brother down the cross in the Senate. So I lose a good black senator for a white person who's the brother, he's a congressman now, a political boss. Nice guy. But what happened to us? We didn't vote. We fell for the okie doke down there. And so Camden's in the same shape in terms of the black condition that Patterson. In fact, Patterson's in better shape, than Camden because you have more people fighting back here than you do in Camden. We had a handful of folks down there fighting back. And so this is not an easy role, if you will, to hold. But as chairman of the Legislative Black Caucus and as the senior serving black elected official in the state, and statewide, now I know someone said elder, but the elder is not, kind of elder now. Elder can be defined a couple ways there now, She must have meant elder like preacher, I don't think, but seriously, for the first time in the history of the state of New Jersey, the Legislative Black Caucus recognized we have to take a step back, regardless of how bad things are. And what we did was, we knew that we had to try to bring every black elected official in the state, from the school board, the council members, the freeholders, the black state elected officials, and the black congressional delegation, Cory Booker, Bonnie Watson-Coleman, and Donald Payne, into the room at the same time and have some serious conversation about what we're supposed to be doing as black leaders on your behalf and why you elected us. And on December the 12th, in Ewing Township, New Jersey, we held the first historic black elected official statewide alliance, policy alliance, not political policy. And I gave them the plenary on policy versus politics. So we left there with an organization that we're going to enhance. But you know what the problem was? When we wanted to do this, I said, okay, we're going to call everybody together. Where's the list of black elected officials? Well, no black organization had a list of black elected officials statewide. And so I figured, well, I'll just go to the state government, because when you get elected, you have to fill these papers out, and you have to send them to Trenton, and they have to certify that you're elected. So they know you got elected. So I went to elect, and they said, we don't have a list of black elected officials. I said, well, I find that very interesting. In 2015, that's when we started. 2015, you don't have a list of black elected officials. I said, you do know I'm elected, right? Oh yeah, we know you elected, and you don't know I'm black? So I said, if you don't know I'm black, then you don't know the Hispanics except for the surnames. You don't know all the women except for the name, but women can be tricky, because I know some women named Willie. I know a Willie Tucker who's a lady. I said, so that's horrible. In 2015-16, we can't even be identified from an ethnic perspective as black elected officials. And so Legislative Black Caucus working with the Institute of Social Justice, we put together the list. We had to call down to all these little towns, and I'm gonna end this soon. We called the little towns and things like that, and my staff was getting frustrated, because when you go to Salem County and Gloucester County, you know, that's still Klans country down there. Yeah. And that's still Klans country. I'm talking about for real. It's still Klans country, okay? And my staff will call and say, I'm calling on behalf of Senator Rice. We'd like to know, are there any black folk on council? They got scared. Oh, why you want to know that? They thought we were going to demonstrate in March, I guess, you know. But so I had to back up, but it was last February, a year from the day. So I said, let me write a script, because we're going to get your name. Somebody's going to tell us where you are. So I wrote a script for my staff. So my staff, Councilman McCoy, Councilman Catton, they had my script, and they called and they said, my name is such and such from Councilman Rice's or Senator Rice's office. And you know, the senator is the chairman of the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus, and this is Black History Month. And we are working with the university students to identify black elected officials. Now as soon as it became an academic project, okay, rather than a demonstration or a civil rights lawsuit for not having us, it was all right. You understand where I'm coming from? Yeah. But I tell you what, we got the list, and we're meeting. I'll be in Patterson, and for every elected official here in a couple of weeks, under the leadership of Assemblyman Ben Wimberly and Siobhan DeSumter, my right hands, you know, I'll be here because I expect every black elected official to be at a meeting. Every black elected official to be at a meeting. Because I'm going to come talk to you, because we're going to have the Passaic County Black Elected Official Alliance. And we're not trying to exclude people, and so I don't want other people to think that we're being racist about it, but the historical nature of what we have to do tells me I got to talk to my people first and organize them, because we have dropped the ball over the years. And I intend to do that. And we're not waiting on anyone. But Assemblywoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, before she left, who's a Congresswoman now, we're going to recreate the statewide alliance also that Congressman Payne had. He didn't use it from my perspective as effectively as it could have been used. But the statewide alliance won't be the black elected official alliance. It's going to be a statewide alliance that's all-inclusive. It's going to be our clergy leadership and clergy organizations. The Black Caucus have a partnership right now that we can communicate with over 350 clergy people from South Jersey to North, East to West. And it's going to be civil rights leaders. It's going to be nonprofit organizations and the sororities and fraternities that are active in our communities, and other people of goodwill who want to have participation in setting policy and driving that. We're encouraging everybody to get back involved with the Black Issues Convention. I am one of the founding members of the Black Issues Convention, which is 33 years old. The only one left in the country. They said New Jersey couldn't survive. We're the only surviving black issues. But we need to get our people back involved, because that's our convention to address this stuff. And so we're going to take the alliances to help enhance that, and we're going to be able to set the policy and tell you about those policies and what we are doing during the course of the year as black alliances throughout. So I want to end by saying it's good to be here, and there's a lot of work to be done. Don't ever be ashamed of work. Don't ever be ashamed to lead. What's getting ready to take place right now in Patterson, I know elections coming up, but if you have good leaders, then let other folks know I'm not against you, but why am I removing a good leader? Just because you gave my son a job, just because you gave me some board position to boost my ego, we cannot sell out black folks, and we cannot sell out our rights and our progress for our personal gain. If you want a personal gain, then stay away from the rest of us. Don't go on council to sell us out. Don't go on the state legislature to sell us out. Don't go to Congress and sell us out. In fact, don't go if you can't stand up and speak out on our behalf. So I'm here. I want to thank you, Councilwoman, for having me. I want to thank Patterson for being here with me and let you know we're there fighting as best we can, Legislative Black Caucus, along working with some of my other colleagues who are not members of the caucus to try to make things right. It's not easy. I'm going to close by telling the young people, the only rights you have, they tell you about all these rights because y'all are killing each other now. The only rights you have right now is the right to do right. Now, the constitutional rights you have is our job as adults to protect them for you. But the only right we let you handle as parents and adults is the right to do right. You got that? And one of those rights that we keep fighting for is a quality education. They may have taken over the Patterson school system, but they did not take over your brains and your minds, okay? You understand that? We'll get it back. And they may have taken the playgrounds and shut them down. They may have taken the arts out to schools, but they haven't taken away your brain power and your ability to learn to read, write, and do math. When you learn those kinds of things, you too gonna be president. You too gonna be senator. You too gonna be somebody. Thank you very much.